Hello and welcome. My name is Samwise and I'm going to be casting a replay. This is one of my own replays from the ladder, kind of following along with the theme that I've been having a bit of zerg versus mech in my practice, and in the first replay that I casted for this channel. So if you're interested, of course, you can go check that out. That was Rogue Pianist versus Delator, where the mech player ended up winning with a maxed out push against Ling Ultra Mutalisk. So this is a game where I was off-racing as Zerg, as a Protoss player, and I played against a player who did go mech. So, not to give any spoilers away, but jumping right into the game here. In the bottom right hand corner, he is Bishop. And of course, myself in the upper left, Samwise, playing for CSO. So right now we have normal openings here. So again, this series maybe I'll make a YouTube playlist out of it eventually, but kind of recognizing some of the challenges we experience in Diamond League facing against mech, because mech is a comp that's not as difficult to pull off, but it requires more skill to defeat than it does to execute, I would say, for the most part. In Diamond League, at the very least. Because you can make tanks and hellbats and thors, and they're all just slow units that aren't really very microable. Obviously, tanks you have to siege and unsiege, so that's a little bit of maintenance, but it's not as difficult to pull off, whereas tanks will tend to smash armies if you're not dealing with them correctly. So we do have Bishop sending an SCV across the map to scout. So some good responsible play by him. Check for any all-ins. The unique thing about this game in terms of dealing with mech is I did a timing attack, not a full all-in, but a little bit more of an aggressive approach to kind of containing the mech really hard. So as we get into that, as we get closer to that point, I'll kind of talk about that a little more. But this is kind of the in-between point of not doing an all-in on them, but not also giving them much space to grow and max out. So we have a Reaper coming across now from Bishop. On the other side, 4 Zerglings on the way and the 2 Queens, kind of typical Reaper defense. So at the pro level, you typically have like a little bit of dance here where the Reaper tries to get some damage on the Zerglings, maybe get a drone or a creep tumor if it can, while the Lings are microing, try to push back the Reaper without taking any losses. Obviously, that changes a bit at Diamond League, and here he actually surprised me right off the bat by going straight to base, which tends to be a little bit more unusual. So I pulled the drones briefly, but then just pulled the Zerglings up, and the Queen bullies him away as well. So he denied a little bit of mine time, but didn't get any kills. Inside factory is finishing up for Bishop, and he's going into a reactor right after the Reaper, so no Marine follow-up. So could have left him slightly vulnerable if I was 12 pooling or something, but I was not, so works out. He took a second gas, making a second factory, so we can see right now that this is when we know that he committed to the mech build. Of course, I don't know that yet in this game. I have the Overlord sitting over here, not scouting in just yet. Being a main Protoss player and only at the bottom of Diamond League for Zerg, I don't necessarily have the clearest idea of what the scout timings should entirely be for Overlords. I'd say my scouting is decent on the whole, but not as good as Diamond level Protoss. I'm Diamond level Zerg main. So Bishop is going to do that Hellion follow-up. Of course, he's going into mech, so he might be just planning to make a lot of Hellions in general. Now he's a tech lab. He's going to start right into a tank, so get some defense up in case I'm making roaches. Over here, I'm taking my third and fourth gases, got healthy saturation on my main and natural. My third base is about to finish up, and I have only 4 zerglings, making 4 more going into my lair. Getting some creep spread out. I have a few queens for defense and creep spreading. Third CC is on the way for bishop, so he's definitely going to go into a bit more of a macro play. I did send this scouting overlord in, so now I pretty much confirmed that it's mech. Check my, I believe this is bishop visions. Check my vision. You can see that I've seen both factories. He's going to pull back actually. So we have 6 Hellions here. Not sure why he pulled back there, but Reaper's just hanging out over here. Making blue flame on the way. Third CC is about to finish up. I have the third base up and running, and I have a healthy worker lead at the moment. 7 workers. So pretty decent advantage here. Hasn't been a whole lot of harassment out of bishop. And I am making a roach warren because I scouted the mech. I want to make the roaches. I decided to add some spores this game, just to be extra safe in case there is some sort of Banshee or Battlecruiser addition. Actually, looking at this replay now, I feel like that was a bad call because I scouted and didn't see any starport. Like, I maybe could have just was assuming that there was a hidden starport I didn't scout, but we can see now with full vision that there is actually no starport and really no need to make spore crawlers. Like, the only thing that this would be needed for is if there was a proxy starport or a ghost academy or something like that, rushing cloak. But even that would have to be proxied as well. So really shouldn't have needed to go into that. I even have a lair already, so I could have just made a overseer, dropping down a macro hatch, push my production a little bit, getting some roach speed. Bunch more factories are coming down now for bishop, and he's going into that 1-1 for mech. He's going to have 5 factory, making a 4th command center. He's actually ahead of me in that regard, so well done by him. And I'm going into some Ravagers, get a little bit of aggression going, potentially. And I do have 1-1 on the way for Roach Ravager. Making some more roaches now. So this is where the game gets a little bit interesting, because I believe this is about the time when I decided to commit to a timing attack. So I have full saturation on 3 bases, and I start taking the 4th hatch, but decided it was a good time to move out and see if I could get a little bit of damage done. Because again, one of the easier ways to deal with mech in ZvT is to kind of contain them and make sure they can't get to that nasty 200 supply mech army. Maxed out mech army anyway. Wouldn't be 200 supply since there's workers. Okay, so I push in here. 4 roach, 4 ravager, handful of zerglings. And I managed to get him to lift off the command center, pull back his SCVs. Not the most efficient attack here, but given that I have decent 3-base saturation and he's now lifted off his 3rd CC, that's an advantage here. So I'm just flooding in roaches at the moment. Roaches definitely tank a little more. And what I was actually doing here too is running my roaches straight up to his units so that the tanks will actually splash damage onto his own units. So that was something I thought could be a little bit helpful. 1-1 about to finish for me. Push in here again, take out this other tank, which helps out a bit because now there's just these tanks on the high ground, so I have a little bit more freedom to run in here and start getting a little bit more economy damage again. Worker count is... So now I'm killing off some SCVs, a few more roaches even streaming in. He brings a tank down, which should help to push away my roaches. Does have a couple hellbats here. Got a lot of tanks now coming down. So he's going to get the cleanup here. But did get him down to 44 workers, and then after this I ended up droning up a bit again, so I'm up to 79 workers. Still streamed out a bunch more roaches. And then I decided to go for burrow and tunneling claws. So I figured with this that would give me the opportunity to really tax his multitasking and get some economic damage done. And I did start up my 5th base on the rich Vespine gas while he's still, so he's going to send out his 4th base now. So I do have a bit of an economic lead, actually 30 worker advantage right now, 34 to be precise. So definitely created a bit of an advantage with that timing attack by just killing some eco at the 3rd and then droning up afterward. So that's kind of the way I was able to create some success in this game. So now I have tunneling claw roaches that I'm sending to the natural, while my main army is pushing in to hit what I was assuming was the 3rd base over here, but I'm going to also see that there is a 4th base landed. Get a little bit of damage on that. Over here, the bird roaches. There is a missile turret over here, so they will start getting shelled as soon as they get close. But he's distracted by me pushing in at the front. Get these depots, bile at this command center. My roaches get into this mineral line, so they're going to pick off this tank and then do some economic damage as well. So this multitasking, get some biles down the Thors. So Ravagers are really good against mech because everything with mech is really slow, at least with this style of mech. So he's going to get the cleanup again, but he's down to 29 workers, so his economy is really hurting at this point. With that multitasking, I was able to mostly clean up the economy in his natural. Still had a roach that just got cleaned up in the 3rd. But it was a nice job by him to raise the depots so I couldn't get into the main. I push in here again. But he has a lot of tanks set up, so this is a pretty inefficient attack, but again, not sure it really matters that much because now it's 76 workers to 35 on his side. He does have 3 orbitals, but at this point I'm pretty much just constantly sending in tunneling claw roaches while my main army pushes from the other side. So what's really nice is you can tell the roaches to burrow and then click them on to where you want them to go, and then just shift click the unburrow command so they will just pop up here, and then you can worry about the main fight over here. The only downside, of course, is if they run by a turret, they'll get killed as if it was a move command, and you won't ever, unless you switch over to them, you won't know what's happening. So I do pick off this 3rd orbital, so it's a big deal. Again, killing a bunch more economies down to 19 workers. And roaches trade. They trade decently with Thors if they can get on top of them. You can see Thors do mess up roaches pretty decently well. But roaches really aren't that expensive, so I did get a couple roaches, tunneling claw roaches up here in the main base this time. Was able to get a little bit more damage, and he's down to 18 workers. Does clean up my army again and kill off one of these overseers. Has a couple of high ground tanks. He's down to just 2 tanks and 5 Thors and a hellbat, so he really doesn't have much army. As you can see with his supply, it's 100. Like, I am close to maxing out again, and he's only at 66 supply. So basically, in this game, it really comes down to just constantly hammering him so that he can't really economy up. I almost made the mistake of following overseers to reveal that these guys were coming, but managed to stop that before it happened. And I decided to split off some right into the main base here, so these 2 pop up and start killing economy there, while these will go here. They do run by some turrets, they take some tank shots. He actually pulls away his workers, so well done there. I push in and kill this base, and then use the overseers for high ground spotting so I can bile down these tanks. So these tanks go down, He still has 3 tanks in the natural, so it's still, all my Ravagers end up getting massacred pretty well. Roaches come in and start killing off these Thors a little bit. But again, he does clean up my army pretty well. But I still have those roaches in the main base. More burrow roaches on the way. I decided to just pull back though at this point. He's down to 17 workers again while I'm still up at 77. And we can see I'm at over triple his total supply. So this game is not even very close, even though I keep pushing in and losing my whole army. Move in a few more burrowed roaches, but they get cleaned up pretty hard this time. Put a missile turret here, so well done by him. So at this point, I decided to stop the burrowed roaches for a little bit, since he did put up the missile turret correctly. Because I know he's still stuck on 2 bases, so I know I clearly have a really strong economic lead at this point. And at this point I was actually running low on gas, so I flooded out a bunch of Zerglings, which will actually deal with this comp fairly well, and the fact that these walls would stop me from getting in and flooding around these. So with mech, often you would make some hellbats to go with it, and those would deal with the Zerglings really hard, so Zerglings usually suck against mech, but in this case they would work fine if I can get him on top of his army. Taking another base over here. Zerglings. Right now, I believe the Zerglings are just scouting around looking for hidden bases, because I want to just make sure he was this low on economy. And then I have my Roach Ravager collected here. Again, I'm maxed out, and he's down at 62 supply, so really just contain him hard. So, okay, so I do push in again, bile down some of these tanks. They do all go down, and I just pull back for now. And then I use the high ground vision to put down a Nidus Worm, put all my Lings into it. Again, pushing a little bit more multi-pronged since he had a good wall at the front. He actually has a Raven. So he comes over here to try to put down an auto turret to deny the Nidus Worm. But my Lings are already coming out. Roach Ravager attacking at the front. Filing down the Thors again, and at this point, taps out. So that's kind of one way you can deal with mech and ZvT. So basically, it was that earlier-ish, it was like a 69 worker timing attack of Roach Ravager Ling on his 3rd base. Didn't even do like a whole lot of actual damage, just maybe killed a few workers. I don't have game heart, so it was hard to tell precisely how many I killed at that point in time. And then lifted off his 3rd base, so it kind of hurt his economy some, while then I continued to stream some roaches across actually on 69 workers, and then got some worker kills, and then from there basically, so he eventually put the 3rd base back down, but his economy, I droned up to 77, so then I had a pretty healthy worker count, while I ended up killing a handful of his workers down to like 44. So basically just killing some eco where I could while droning up a little bit behind it. And then after that, basically, it's really just a matter of time, like picking him away over time. Like I did the Tunneling Claw Roaches, and then I eventually went to the Nidus Worm to kind of finish the job. Basically just taxing his multitasking. Like you could also do overload drops, or you could do an earlier Nidus Worm of just make sure you can get some units in behind into one of his other bases while you're attacking at the front, just so that you can kill some economy and continue to basically hamper his growth. Because even on just 2 or 3 bases, the Terran can potentially build up to the point where he maxes out if you're not able to get any economic damage done. So this is one way to deal with mech, but it really relies on really constricting and hampering his economic growth. But it wasn't like a full all-in either. Like you could tell, I continued into a longer macro game, and I ended up maxing out on Roach Ravager. I never really transitioned into anything else. I think I started to make some of the tech buildings to possibly go into something else if needed, but ended up, because I denied his third base and like even eventually killed it, like I lifted off first and eventually killed it, I kind of felt like I was in a position where I didn't really need to transition and I could just keep hammering him over and over again. So that's what I did. I was able to secure the victory. So hope you enjoyed and hope this gives you some ideas or inspiration for how to deal with mech as a Zerg player. Until next time, this was Samwise. Have a good one.